Good afternoon. Okay, so today we are on 2 Samuel chapter 14 through 18. I'm just getting my notes pulled up. Me too. Me too. Yesterday was good. Okay. All right. So, chapter 14 says, So Joab the son of Zeruiah perceived that the king's heart was concerned about Absalom. And Joab sent to Tekoa, and brought from there a wise woman and said to her, Please pretend to be a mourner and put on mourning apparel. Do not anoint yourself with oil, but act like a woman who has been mourning a long time for the dead. Go to the king and speak to him in this matter. So Joab put the words in her mouth. And when the woman of Tekoa spoke to the king, she fell on her face to the ground and prostrated herself and said, Help, O king! Then the king said to her, What troubles you? And she said, Indeed, I am a widow. My husband is dead. Now your maidservant had 2 sons, and the 2 fought with each other in the field, and there was no one to part them. But the one struck the other and killed him. And now the whole family has risen up against your maidservant, and they said, Deliver him who struck his brother, that we may execute him for the life of his brother, whom he killed, and we will destroy the heir also. So they would extinguish my ember that is left, and leave to my husband neither name nor remnant on the earth. Then the king said to the woman, Go to your house, I will give orders concerning you. And the woman of Tekoa said to the king, My lord, O king, let the iniquity be on me and my father's house, and the king and his throne be guiltless. So the king said, Whoever says anything to you, bring him to me, and he shall not touch you anymore. Then she said, Please let the king remember the Lord your God, and do not permit the avenger of blood to destroy any more, lest they destroy my son. And he said, As the Lord lives, not one hair of your son shall fall to the ground. Therefore the woman said, Please let your maidservant speak another word, my lord the king. And he said, Say on. So the woman said, Why then have you schemed such a thing against the people of God? For the king speaks this thing as one who is guilty, in that the king does not bring his banished one home. For we will surely die and become like water spilled out on the ground, which cannot be gathered up again. Yet God does not take away a life, but he devises means so that his banished ones are not expelled from him. Now therefore I have come to speak of this thing to my lord the king, because the people have made me afraid. And your maidservant said, I will now speak to the king. It may be that the king will perform the request of his maidservant. For the king will hear and deliver his maidservant from the hand of the man who would destroy me and my son together from the inheritance of God. Your maidservant said, the word of my lord the king will now be comforting. For as the angel of God, so is my lord the king in discerning good and evil. And may the Lord your God be with you. Then the king answered and said to the woman, please do not hide from me anything that I ask you. And the woman said, please let my lord the king speak. So the king said, is the hand of Joab with you all in this? And the woman answered and said, as you live, my lord the king, no one can turn to the right hand or to the left from anything that my lord the king has spoken. For your servant Joab commanded me, and he put all of these words in the mouth of your maidservant. To bring about this change of affairs, your servant Joab has done this thing. But my lord is wise, according to the wisdom of the angel of God, to know everything that is in the earth. And the king said to Joab, all right, I have granted this thing. Go therefore, bring back the young man Absalom. Then Joab fell to the ground on his face and bowed himself and thanked the king. And Joab said, today your servant knows that I have found favor in your sight, my lord, my king, in that the king has fulfilled the request of his servant. So Joab arose and went to Geshur and brought Absalom to Jerusalem. And the king said, let him return to his own house, but do not let him see my face. So Absalom returned to his own house, but did not see the king's face. Now, in all of Israel, there was no one who was praised as much as Absalom for his good works. From the sole of his foot to the crown of his head, there was no blemish on him. And when he cut the hair of his head at the end of every year, he cut it because it was heavy on him. When he cut it, he weighed the hair of his head at 200 shekels, according to the king's standard. To Absalom were born 3 sons and 1 daughter, whose name was Tamar. She was a woman of beautiful appearance. And Absalom dwelt 2 full years in Jerusalem, but did not see the king's face. Therefore Absalom sent for Joab to send him to the king, but he would not come to him. And when he sent again the second time, he would not come. So he said to his servants, see, Joab's field is near mine, and he has barley there. Go and set it on fire. And Absalom's servants set the field on fire. Then Joab arose and came to Absalom's house and said to him, why have your servants set my field on fire? And Absalom answered Joab, look, I sent to you saying, come here so that I may send you to the king to say, why have I come to Geshur? It would have been better for me to be there still. Now therefore let me see the king's face, but if there is iniquity in me, let him execute me. So Joab went to the king and told him, and when he had called for Absalom, he came to the king and bowed himself on his face to the ground before the king. Then the king kissed Absalom. Now that's bravery. So David forgave him. Chapter 15. After this, it happened that Absalom provided himself with chariots and horses and 50 men to run before him. Now Absalom would rise early and stand beside the way to the gate. So it was whenever anyone who had a lawsuit, came to the king for a decision, that Absalom would call to him and say, what city are you from? And he would say, your servant is from such a tribe of Israel. Then Absalom would say to him, look, your case is good and right, but there is no deputy of the king to hear you. Moreover, Absalom would say, "Oh, that I were made judge in the land, and everyone who has any suit or cause would come to me. Then I would give him justice." And so it was, whenever anyone came near to bow down to him, that he would put out his hand and take him and kiss him. In this manner, Absalom acted toward all of Israel who came to the king for judgment. So Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel. Now it came to pass after 40 years that Absalom said to the king, "Please let me go to Hebron and pay the vow which I have made to the Lord. For your servant took a vow while I dwelt at Jeshurun in Syria, saying, if the Lord indeed brings me back to Jerusalem, then I will serve the Lord." Isn't that interesting? He stole the hearts of the people strategically, and then after 40 years, he's asking. That's crazy. And the king said to him, "Go in peace." So he arose and went to Hebron. Then Absalom sent spies throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, "As soon as you hear the sound of the trumpet, then you shall say, Absalom reigns in Hebron." And with Absalom went 200 men invited from Jerusalem, and they went along innocently and didn't know anything. Then Absalom sent for Ahithophel, the Gileonite, David's counselor, from his city, from Gilo, while he offered sacrifices. And the conspiracy grew strong, for the people with Absalom continually increased in number. Now a messenger came to David, saying, "The hearts of men of Israel, are with Absalom." So David said to all of his servants who were with him at Jerusalem, "Arise and let us flee, or we shall not escape from Absalom. Make haste to depart, lest he overtake us suddenly and bring disaster upon us and strike the city with the edge of the sword." And the king's servants said to the king, "We are your servants, ready to do whatever my lord the king commands." Then the king went out with all of his household after him, but the king left 10 women, concubines, to keep the house. And the king went out with all of the people after him and stopped at the outskirts. Then all of his servants passed before him, and the Cherethites, all the Pelethites, and the Gittites, 600 men who had followed him from Gath, passed before the king. Then the king said to Ittai the Gittite, "Why are you also going with us? Return and remain with the king, for you are a foreigner and also an exile from your own place. In fact, you came only yesterday. Should I make you wander up and down with us today? Since I go, I know not where. Return and take your brethren back. Mercy and truth be with you." But Ittai answered the king and said, "As the Lord lives, and as my lord the king lives, surely in whatever place my lord the king shall be, whether in death or life, even there also your servant will be." Doesn't that sound like the Ruth and Naomi thing? That's so powerful. So David said to Ittai, "Go and cross over." Then Ittai the Gittite and all of his men and all the little ones who were with him crossed over. And all of the country wept with a loud voice, and all of the people crossed over. The king himself also crossed over Brook Kidron, and all the people crossed over toward the way of the wilderness. There was Zadok also and all the Levites with him, bearing the ark of the covenant of God. And they set down the ark of God, and Abiathar went up until the people had finished crossing over from that city. Then the king said to Zadok, "Carry the ark of God back to the city. If I find favor in the eyes of the Lord, he will bring me back and show me both it and his dwelling place. But if he says thus, I have no delight in you, here I am, let him do to me as seems good to him." The king also said to Zadok the priest, "Are you not a seer? Return to the city in peace, and your two sons with you, Ahimaaz your son, and Jonathan the son of Abiathar. See, I will wait in the plains of the wilderness until word comes from you to inform me." Therefore Zadok and Abiathar carried the ark of God back to Jerusalem, and they remained there. So David went up by the ascent of the Mount of Olives and wept as he went up. And he had his head covered and went barefoot. And all the people who were with him covered their heads and went up, weeping as they went up. Then someone told David, saying, "Ahithophel is among the conspirators with Absalom." And David said, "O Lord, I pray, turn the counsel of Ahithophel into foolishness." So he was a good counselor, but he's saying, turn his counsel into foolishness. Now it happened when David had come to the top of the mountain where he worshiped God, there was Hushai the Archite coming to meet him with his robe torn and dust on his head. David said to him, "If you go on with me, then you will become a burden to me. But if you return to the city and say to Absalom, 'I will be your servant, O king, as I was your father's servant previously, so I will now also be your servant,' then you may defeat the counsel of Ahithophel for me. And do you not have Zadok and Abiathar the priests with you there? Therefore it will be that whatever you hear from the king's house, you shall tell to Zadok and Abiathar the priests. Indeed, they have there with them their two sons, Ahimaaz, Zadok's son, and Jonathan, Abiathar's son, and by them you shall send me everything you hear." So Hushai, David's friend, went into the city, and Absalom came into Jerusalem. Chapter 16. When David was a little past the top of the mountain, there was Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth, who met him with a couple of saddled donkeys, and on them 200 loaves of bread, 100 clusters of raisins, 100 summer fruits, and a skin of wine. And the king said to Ziba, "What do you mean to do with these?" So Ziba said, "The donkeys are for the king's household to ride on, the bread and the summer fruit for the young men to eat, and the wine for those who are faint in the wilderness to drink." Then the king said, "And where is your master's son?" And Ziba said to the king, "Indeed, he is staying in Jerusalem, for he said that today the house of Israel will restore the kingdom of my father to me." So the king said to Ziba, all that belongs to Mephibosheth is yours." And Ziba said, "I humbly bow before you, that I may find favor in your sight, my lord, O king." Now when King David came up to Bahurim, there was a man from the family of the house of Saul, whose name was Shimei, the son of Gera, coming from there. He came out cursing continuously as he came. That's the first time you hear anything about cursing in the Bible. And he threw stones at David and all of the servants of King David, and all of the people and all the mighty men were on his right hand and his left. Also Shimei said thus when he cursed, come out, you bloodthirsty man, you rogue. The Lord has brought upon you all the blood of the house of Saul, in whose place you have reigned. And the Lord has delivered the kingdom into the hand of Absalom your son. So now you are caught in your own evil, because you are a bloodthirsty man. Then Abishai, son of Zeruiah, said to the king, why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Please let me go over and take off his head. But the king said, what have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah? So let him curse, because the Lord has said to him, curse David. Who then shall say, why have you done so? And David said to Abishai and all of his servants, see how my son, who came from my own body, seeks my life. How much more now may this Benjamite? Let him alone and let him curse, for the Lord has ordered him. It may be that the Lord will look upon my affliction, that the Lord will repay me with good for this cursing day. And as David and his men went out along the road, Shimei went along the hillside opposite him, and cursed as he went, and threw stones at him, and kicked up dust. Now the king and all the people who were with him became weary, so they refreshed themselves there. Meanwhile, Absalom and all the people, the men of Israel, came to Jerusalem, and Ahithophel was with him. And so it was when Hushai the Archite, David's friend, came to Absalom, that Hushai said to Absalom, long live the king, long live the king. So Absalom said to Hushai, is this your loyalty to your friend? Why did you not go with your friend? And Hushai said to Absalom, no, but whom the Lord and his people and all the men of Israel choose, his I will be, and with him I will remain. Furthermore, whom should I serve? Should I not serve in the presence of his son, as I have served in your father's presence? So will I be in your presence. Then Absalom said to Ahithophel, give advice as to what we should do. And Ahithophel said to Absalom, go in to your father's concubines, whom he has left to keep the house, and all of Israel will hear that you are abhorred by your father. Then the hands of all who are with you will be strong. So they pitched a tent for Absalom on the top of the house, and Absalom went into his father's concubines in the sight of all of Israel. Now the advice of Ahithophel, which he gave in those days, was as if one had inquired at the oracle of God. So was all the advice of Ahithophel, both with David and with Absalom. Chapter 17. Moreover, Ahithophel said to Absalom, now let me choose 12,000 men, and I will arise and pursue David tonight. I will come upon him while he is weary and weak, and make him afraid, and all the people who are with him will flee, and I will strike only the king. Then I will bring back all the people to you when all return except the man whom you seek. All of the people will be at peace. And the saying pleased Absalom and all the elders of Israel. It's crazy. Then Absalom said, now call Hushai the Archite also, and let us hear what he says too. And when Hushai came to Absalom, Absalom spoke to him, saying, Ahithophel has spoken in this manner. Shall we do what he says? If not, speak up. So Hushai said to Absalom, the advice that Ahithophel has given is not good at this time. For said Hushai, you know your father and his men, that they are mighty men, and that they are enraged in their minds like a bear robbed of her cubs in the field. And your father is a man of war, and will not camp with the people. Surely by now he is hidden in some pit or in some other place. And it will be when some of them are overthrown at the first, that whoever hears it will say, there is a slaughter among the people who follows Absalom. And even he who is valiant, whose heart is like the heart of a lion, will melt completely. For all of Israel knows that your father is a mighty man, and those who are with him are valiant men. Therefore I advise that all of Israel be fully gathered to you from Dan to Beersheba, like the sand that is by the sea for multitude, and that you go to battle in person. So we will come upon him in some place where he may be found, and we will fall on him as the dew falls on the ground. And of him and all men who are with him, there shall not be left so much as one. Moreover, if he is withdrawn into a city, then all of Israel shall bring ropes to that city, and we will put it into the river until there is not one small stone found there. Excuse me. So Absalom and all the men of Israel said, the advice of Hushai the Archite is better than the advice of Ahithophel. So the Lord had proposed to defeat the good advice of Ahithophel, to the intent that the Lord may bring disaster upon Absalom. Then Hushai said to Zadok and Abiathar the priest, thus and so Ahithophel advised Absalom and the elders of Israel, and thus and so I have advised. Now therefore send quickly and tell David, saying, do not spend this night in the plains of the wilderness, but speedily cross over, lest the king and all the people who are with him be swallowed up. Now Jonathan and Ahimaaz stayed at En Rogel. They dared not be seen coming into the city. So a female servant would come and tell them, and they would go and tell the king David. Nevertheless, a lad saw them and told Absalom. But both of them went away quickly and came to a man's house in Bahurim, who had a well in his court, and they went down into the well. Then the women took and spread a covering over the well's mouth, and spread ground grain on it, and the thing was not known. Wow. And when Absalom's servants came to the woman at the house, they said, where are Ahimaaz and Jonathan? So the woman said to them, they have gone over the water brook. And when they had searched and could not find them, they returned to Jerusalem. Now it came to pass after they had departed that they came up out of the well and went and told King David and said to David, arise and cross over the water quickly, for thus has Ahithophel advised against you. So David and all the people who were with him arose and crossed over the Jordan. By morning light, not one of them was left who had not gone over the Jordan. Now when Ahithophel saw that his advice was not followed, he saddled a donkey and arose and went home to his house to the city. Then he put his household in order and hanged himself and died. And he was buried in his father's tomb. What a dishonorable way to leave the earth. Then David went to Mahanaim, and Absalom crossed over the Jordan, he and all the men of Israel with him. And Absalom made Amasa captain of the army instead of Joab. Then Amasa was the son of a man whose name was Jithra, an Israelite, who had gone in to Abigail, the daughter of Nahash, sister of Zeruiah, Joab's mother. So Israel and Absalom encamped in the land of Gilead. Now it happened when David had come to Mahanaim, which that means to be between two camps, that Shobi, the son of Nahash from Rabbah of the people of Ammon, Machir, the son of Amiel from Lodabar, and Barzillai, the Gileadite from Rogelium, bought beds and basins, earthen vessels and wheat, barley and flour, parched grain and beans, lentils and parched seeds, honey and curds, sheep and cheese of the herd, for David and the people who were with him to eat. For they said, the people are hungry and weary and thirsty in the wilderness. So that's provision right there. That's divine provision. God sent some millionaires to bless David. That's basically what happened. And his whole crew. Chapter 18. And David numbered the people who were with him and set captains of thousands and captains of hundreds over them. Then David sent out 1/3 of the people under the hand of Joab, 1/3 under the hand of Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, Joab's brother, and 1/3 under the hand of Ittai the Gittite. And the king said to the people, I will surely go out with you myself. So he's delegating authority to all three of them. But the people answered, you shall not go out, for if we flee away, they will not care about us, nor if half of us die, will they care about us. But you are worth 10,000s of us now, for you are now more help to us in the city. Then the king said to them, whatever seems best to you, I will do. So the king stood beside the gate, and all the people went out by the hundreds and the thousands. Now the king had commanded Joab, Abishai, and Ittai, saying, deal gently for my sake with the young man Absalom. And all the people heard when the king gave all the captains orders concerning Absalom. So the people went out into the field of battle against Israel, and the battle was in the woods of Ephraim. The people of Israel were overthrown there before the servants of David, and a great slaughter of 20,000 took place there that day. For the battle there was scattered over the face of the whole countryside. The woods devoured more people that day than the sword devoured. Then Absalom met the servants of David. Absalom rode on a mule. The mule went under the thick boughs of a great terebinth tree, and his head caught in the terebinth. So he was left hanging between heaven and earth, and the mule, which was under him, went on. Now a certain man saw it and told Joab and said, I just saw Absalom hanging in a terebinth tree. So Joab said to the man who told him, you just saw him? And why did you not strike him there to the ground? I would have given you 10 shekels of silver and a belt. But the man said to Joab, though I were to receive 1,000 shekels of silver in my hand, I would not raise my hand against the king's son. For in your hearing the king commanded you, and Abishai and Ittai, saying, beware lest anyone touch the young man Absalom. Otherwise I would have dealt falsely against my own life. For there is nothing hidden from the king, and you yourself would have set yourself against me. Then Joab said, I cannot linger with you. And he took the 3 spears in his hand and thrust them through Absalom's heart, while he was still alive in the midst of the terebinth tree. And 10 young men who bore Joab's armor surrounded Absalom and struck and killed him. So Joab blew the trumpet, and the people returned from pursuing Israel. For Joab held back the people, and they took Absalom and cast him into a large pit in the woods, and laid a very large heap of stones over him. Then all of Israel fled, everyone to his tent. Now Absalom in his lifetime had taken and set up a pillar for himself, which is in the king's valley. For he said, I have no son to keep my name in remembrance. He called the pillar after his own name, and to this day it is called Absalom's monument. Then Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok, said, let me run now and take the news to the king, how the Lord has avenged him of his enemies. And Joab said to him, you shall not take the news this day, for you shall take the news another day. But today you shall take no news, because the king's son is dead. Then Joab said to the Cushite, go and tell the king what you have seen. So the Cushite bowed himself to Joab and ran. And Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok, said again to Joab, but whatever happens, please let me also run after the Cushite. So Joab said, why will you run, my son, since you have no news ready? But whatever happens, he said, let me run. So he said to him, run. Then Ahimaaz ran by way of the plain and outran the Cushite. Now David was sitting between the 2 gates, and the watchman went up to the roof over the gate to the wall, lifted his eyes and looked, and there was a man running alone. Then the watchman cried out, that's the job of the watchman, and told the king, and the king said, if he is alone, there is news in his mouth. And he came rapidly and drew near. Then the watchman saw another man running, and the watchman called to the gatekeeper and said, There is another man running alone. And the king said, he also brings news. So the watchman said, I think the running of the first is like the running of Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok. And the king said, he is a good man and comes with good news. So Ahimaaz came out and said to the king, all is well. Then he bowed his face to the earth before the king and said, blessed be the Lord your God, who has delivered up the men who raised their hands against the Lord my king. The king said, is the young man Absalom safe? Ahimaaz answered, when Joab sent the king's servant and me your servant, I saw a great tumult, but I did not know what it was about. And the king said, turn aside and stand here. So he turned aside and stood still. Just then the Cushite came, and the Cushite said, there is good news, my lord the king, for the Lord has avenged you this day of all those who rose against you. And the king said to the Cushite, is the young man Absalom safe? So the Cushite answered, may the enemies of my lord the king and all who rise against you to do harm be like that young man. Then the king was deeply moved and went up to the chamber over the gate and wept. And as he went, he said thus, oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died in your place. Oh, Absalom, my son, my son. That sword has not departed from his house. All right, so 2 Samuel 14. Restoration without repentance breeds instability. Joab arranges for a wise woman to persuade David to allow Absalom's return from exile. David agrees, but keeps Absalom at a distance for 2 full years. Eventually, Absalom forces Joab's attention and gains full access to David's presence. This restoration is geographical and not just spiritual. Absalom came home, but he never repented. David restored proximity without a resolution, leaving Absalom's sin unjudged, and his heart was unchanged. The chapter quietly reveals that reconciliation without truth creates the illusion of peace, while rebellion grows beneath the surface, because we know that's a heart issue, right? And then restoration that bypasses repentance delays conflict, but it does not remove it. The devotional truth of this chapter is that peace built without truth is only temporary. And the leadership truth is that leaders must address root issues and not just surface outcomes. 2 Samuel 15, stolen hearts and sovereign departure. Absalom begins to steal the hearts of Israel by presenting himself as accessible and sympathetic. In time, he declares himself king in Hebron, forcing David to flee to Jerusalem. David leaves willingly, refusing to weaponize the ark or manipulate God's presence for his own security. Instead, he entrusts his fate to the Lord, saying that if God delights in him, he will return. This chapter reveals a profound contrast. Absalom gets power while David surrenders it. One builds a kingdom through flattery. The other preserves legitimacy through trust. True authority remains intact even when the position is temporarily lost. The devotional truth of this chapter is that God remains faithful during seasons of displacement, and the leadership truth is that holding power loosely preserves divine favor. And then 2 Samuel 16, tested loyalty and public rebellion. As David flees, Shimei curses him, accusing him of bloodshed. David refuses to retaliate, submitting himself instead to God's discipline. Meanwhile, Absalom publicly violates David's concubines, which that would have never been an instruction from the Lord, openly declaring the irreversibility of his rebellion. When I was reading that, I was thinking about like this whole TikTok trend that's going on where people are denouncing God. Like that's what that sounds like to me, which is so crazy. But yeah, this chapter exposes hearts. David's humility under insult reveals spiritual maturity. Absalom's public sin reveals a heart that is hardened beyond restraint. What begins as secret rebellion becomes a public defiance. God tests leaders through dishonor just as much as hardship. How are you going to handle it, The devotional truth of this chapter is enduring insult with humility refines your character. Leaders grow stronger when they trust God with their reputation. That's the leadership truth. And then 2 Samuel 17. God frustrates the counsel of Ahithophel to preserve his purpose. Ahithophel advises quick battle against David. And it sounded good, right? It sounded like it was going to go that way, but nope. But God overturns his counsel through Hushai. Absalom delays, allowing David just enough time to escape. When Ahithophel realizes his wisdom no longer carries weight, he took his own life. This chapter reveals divine sovereignty at work behind human strategy. Intelligence devoid of submission collapses when God removes his favor. David is preserved not by strength, but by God's decree. God governs the outcomes even when human plans appear to be sound. The devotional truth of this chapter is that God's purpose cannot be outmaneuvered. And the leadership truth is that success depends on alignment with God and not just brilliance alone. Sounds like a little Batman Robin show, like, the good guys, the bad guys, 2 Samuel 18, rebellion ends, but grief remains. David forces defeat of Absalom's army. I didn't type up oh gosh, I'm tripping my own self up. Absalom is killed despite David's instruction to deal gently with him. David's response is not a celebration. Again, this shows the matters of the heart. But instead of gloating and, all of that, deep grief. Oh, my son, Absalom. This chapter captures the painful intersection of justice and love. And that's the same way that Samuel was with Saul. He grieved, God ends the rebellion, but the victory costs David dearly. The king regains his throne, but he loses his son. The chapter reveals a sobering truth. Rebellion destroys both the rebel and the one who loves them. Victory does not always feel triumphant when love is involved. The devotional truth of this chapter is that God's justice stands even amid personal sorrows. And the leadership truth is that leaders often carry private grief behind public victory. And the overall summary of all of these chapters, number 1, chapter 14, restoration without repentance plants rebellion. Chapter 15, deception gathers followers, but humility preserves calling. Chapter 16, humility is tested, rebellion becomes public. Chapter 17, God overthrows counsel to preserve his anointed. Chapter 18, rebellion ends in death and not in triumph. Unresolved sin matures into rebellion, but God's covenant purposes endure. David suffers discipline, yet God preserves his throne, not because of David being flawless, but because God is faithful. The leadership takeaway from all of these chapters is that godly leaders must confront issues early. They preach this thing like what you don't kill now will end up hurting you later. So you got to kill it in its infancy stages. Yeah. Surrender authority when necessary. Endure dishonor humbly. Trust God's sovereignty and accept that leadership carries emotional weight along with victory. So you're not crazy if you feel burdened even in the midst of victory, I pray that that encourages you all. And I pray that you guys have a wonderful weekend. We're like coming out of Resurrection Weekend. We're going into Pentecost. So next week is week 13 of the year. And we'll start off on 2 Samuel 19. And we'll end on 1 Kings 19 by the end of the week. Isn't that something? But I love you guys. I pray that you are blessed. Please like, share, comment, and chit chat in the comments as well, because if y'all have any revelations that you want to add to it, that's what the comment section is for. So anyways, God bless you and enjoy the rest of your day. Amen.